Hey guys, thanks for being with us. My name is Lyle. Welcome to Emergent Leadership. Today, I'm fortunate enough to be talking to Chief Seth Komansky with Wake County. You're the Chief of Ops and the Deputy Director of EMS. Thank you for being with me today, Chief.
Hey, Brett. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So you know the name of the game. We're talking about leadership. So I'm curious to know kind of your path to leadership. Obviously you're in the role you're in now. How did you get there? Tell me a little bit about your story.
Sure. So, I moved down to North Carolina in 2008. I was in EMS probably starting about 2000 as an EMT, decided that I was gonna, didn't think this was gonna be a career, right? I ended up going to undergrad, got a business degree. Really thought that I was gonna go more into, this post 9/11 world of emergency management, business continuity planning, private sector type stuff. Got like most, I got the bug in EMS and stayed in EMS. Went to paramedic school and in New York in 2000 and graduated in 2006 and worked up there for a while and came down to North Carolina in 2008. Worked for Wake County the entire time I've been down here, and I've filled every role in operations that we have. So started as a paramedic, worked my way up through the field training officer roles, advanced practice paramedic. I was the district chief in the downtown district for a while, and most recently was promoted in the past about 3 years ago to this deputy director position, which oversees operations. So the chief of operations. It's one of our 5 functional areas within the organization.
Yeah. So you do have a pretty traditional EMS path once you got there. So it sounds like
Right.
maybe atypical in the path to get there, but I think you'd be surprised how many of the people I've spoken with that have kind of that similar story. They kind of just landed in EMS, or they had an experience that took them there and went, this is cool. I think I should probably, dive into this a little bit more. So I'm not terribly surprised at your story, but I love, that it is a little bit typical. So I'm curious, you got to where you're going. Obviously we never get to anywhere we're going by ourselves. It's always part of something bigger than us, or somebody who sees something in us or says, hey, there's this thing, and you should look into it. You guys there have a pretty interesting story related to books. You guys have used books somehow to kind of promote leadership. Tell me about books and how you've used that as a tool
Sure.
at Wake County.
Yeah, so several years back, we started a book club with our district chief group, which is our operations leadership team. The district chiefs are shift commanders, who are assistant chiefs, and myself, and really kind of set the tone in building what we wanted in leadership by using these books. So every quarter we read a different book: Extreme Ownership, Team of Teams, Dave Subs. Let's see, what else have we read? Strength Finder, Start with Why. I mean, bringing philosophies from all these different books and outside of what your normal EMS world would bring, and kind of build upon those philosophies and those foundations to kind of strengthen what our leadership would be. We've done personal growth plans off of this, based off of those narratives and the stories and the books. Let each person have some introspection and build the person and not just the team, because you can't really build a team without people knowing who they are. And then,
say that louder. Say that louder. And again, for the people,
you can't build a team without knowing who you are. The people of the team are the building blocks to that team. And then brought in ideas from outside. So everybody, we've had a quarter where everybody had to find an article having to do with something outside of EMS, but it was a leadership philosophy, whether it was from some Fortune 500 company or something else. And bring that in and kind of share the article and how it applies to what we're trying to do. Sure. Most recently, in the last couple of quarters, we did Strength-Based Leadership 2.0, or Strength Finder 2.0, which talks about the philosophies of strength-based leadership, and it really teaches people what are their biggest strengths and the keys to this philosophy of that. You are not necessarily needing to focus on building your weaknesses up to be as good as your strengths. Your strengths are your strengths. And you should focus on enhancing those strengths and applying them to what you do. And it takes all different kinds to build a team. And so it's important for us to have people of the various strengths, all the categories, and making sure that the team has people that can do each thing. Right. And then we most recently reviewed those strengths and kind of use those strengths to understand how those strengths benefited each person on our team when comparing it to crisis leadership. You know, in the last, I think everybody in EMS in the last couple of months have seen some level of crisis in their communities, whether it's from COVID or a budget process or the protests turned civil unrest. You know, we have definitely needed strengths and the different kinds of strengths to work through a variety of challenges that are uncharted in many ways.
Sure. Yeah, you hit at a couple things. So I have not read a couple of your book clubs, so I'll have to get you to message those to me. But the one that you did say that I think is interesting, Simon Sinek's Finding Your Why. And he talks a lot. So for our listeners, if you're not familiar, it's Simon, S-I-N-E-K. And Simon's a leadership coach. And so he does a lot of organizational leadership. But the Finding Your Why ties really nicely into the Strength Finders, because it's all about how do you find that thing within you. And honestly, this is my passion as a coach, is what is that thing that makes you different? And so you're not in this mindset of, I need to blend, I need to be a cultural fit. It's how do you complement your peers? And so if we have a bunch of people that are exactly the same, how do we ever grow? How do we progress? So that's kind of the business side of why it matters. From the personal perspective, I'm sure once you go through those Strength Finders, you really get kind of some freedom, some release in that, right? This is the thing I'm good at. How can I focus on that? And having that liberty to say, I don't have to be good at everything. I'm sure that was a game changer. Was that a game changer for you, Seth?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the review we got from most people is, this makes a lot of sense. They just didn't know what to call it. Right. So you know, they're here and they understand what the strengths mean and how to capitalize on what they're really good at. I think people know what their strengths are and what they offer, but now we can actually mix and match. And while we haven't done it yet, the theory is you can build teams based off of taking pieces and parts from different areas and different strengths, and everybody complements each other well. Right. And I think to build on what you said about the why, right? You know, when you look at the generations in the workplace, you know, you get buy-in by explaining the why, not just saying you're going to do that. And so when you couple that with a book like Dave Sub and you talk servant leadership and just culture, you know, those things really complement each other really well. And so when you're a leader in operations and you are trying to satisfy many people, right? As long as you follow the basic core function or the core beliefs in those concepts, you're looking out for everybody without having to change so drastically with each person.
Right. No, I think that's incredible. So when you did it, was there anything that you were kind of surprised by, or anything that you went, oh yeah, that makes all the sense in the world? Tell me a little bit about your strengths, Seth.
So you know, there were a couple that I read. I'm like, that sounds pretty rough, right? Like, you know, self-assurance. Like, you know, when you first hear that word, like, or that phrase, you know, like that makes you kind of, you know, not part of a team, right? You know, you're just going out there and doing your thing. But realistically, when you read the definition to what it means, it makes you part of the team and one of the people that are pushing forward. You're confident in the decision making, and a lot of that for me has always been the decision making in critical moments. Really, I've always felt very comfortable, probably more comfortable in those environments than in other like non-critical moments, right? Where you're having a lot of time to make decisions. Right. I feel more comfortable in those high consequence environments than I do in something where we can sit back and talk about it for a long time.
Kind of like when someone calls you and says, "Hey, I want you to be on my podcast."
Yeah, who would do that?
And they say, I don't know, and then we just do it. I love that. And that absolutely, that self-assurance thing is definitely a part of a leader. I think that there's multiple pieces to a team, right? And it's important that as we talk about leadership, it's not just about your quality as a leader. It's about how and who you're leading and understanding those around you to be able to create that environment that really works. So it's interesting you guys used a book club to get that introspection.
And now we're working to, now that people kind of understand themselves a little bit, we're working to use what we've learned to now focus on the growth of the team, and that's our pathway forward. So our next sessions while we kind of took a break and applied it to crisis leadership because I think it was timely. We're going to get back on track and really look at how everything we've learned about ourselves can now help to continue to push our team forward. And also, we don't want to just focus on what who we have in our leadership roles now, but take the next generation of leaders that we have coming up through the ranks and work with them so they start doing the personal growth plans and understand some of their strengths and focus on building themselves up. I mean, that's, I think, one of the biggest shortcomings in EMS. Pretty frequently, we put somebody on a supervisor vehicle and they've only been trained as a paramedic. You know, they're a paramedic on a car now instead of a paramedic on an ambulance.
Right.
And we've not really, they're few and far between true leadership development programs. And while, yeah, many governments have like a leadership class or an HR mandated supervisor class, does it really teach you how to be a strong leader?
Right.
And I think that's what we're trying to build. And we are certainly not perfect. We certainly don't have the solution. We're just trying to do something to push it forward outside of the normal, expectations of what a leadership program. Most people hear leadership and it's similar to hearing like taking one of those ICS NIMS class and go, ugh. I happen to like those NIMS.
Right. I was saying that maybe half the people say that because I feel that way about leadership. I like leadership and I want to talk about it and engage and create a podcast about it. So I think it depends on your audience for sure. But that's a good analogy. And so when you have people that you're saying, hey, this is important to us. And as an agency, you guys are identifying that leadership matters and taking that mid-level kind of manager, if we were in a corporate world, but the leaders that are close enough to your front lines and then also close enough to the vision and the mission of the organization, kind of, connecting those dots is important. Yeah. And when you don't have that translator, I think a lot of times you get an environment where your frontline folks, it becomes an us and them. And so I think it's great that you guys are progressive and there's that, introspection as an agency, because I don't believe, and I would love if, for our audience, if you are doing this in your agency, I would love to know what people are doing. This is the first I've heard of a strength finder. We did in an agency that I was with, the LPI. I personally have done every development, personality, behavior under the sun. And I know all my numbers and labels and all the things. I'm a whatever, I think it challenged the process and a champion. I don't know. Anyway. So we all have our things and our labels. And I think while labels are difficult, understanding, like you said, it's not about the word, it's not about the label, it's about what does it really mean? How does that translate into your style? Right. So I'm curious, how does self-assurance, you mentioned incident management, that's a part of your, I don't know, is that a part of your past? That's part of your daily operations too, Seth. Will you tell me a little bit about your incident command experience and maybe how those leadership skills have tied into that? Sure.
No, I mean, I think that one of the reasons I couldn't get out of EMS is because I really love the chaos of a major scene, right? And I love being able to bring the calm to the chaos. I know that sounds pretty cliche, but like I feel comfortable in that environment, and so for me, I think that leadership comes, it comes naturally to some people, but it can definitely be learned, and no better way to learn than getting thrown into the middle of a crazy incident, right?
Sure.
And it could be something, where it's a routine, I hate to use the word routine, but it could be something where you pull up to that multi-patient bus or multi-patient accident, right? And you're that's the first time you've been to the scene as a paramedic on an ambulance, and now you're the first one there, and you got to call for resources, and you got to triage the scene, and you got to find out who's bad and who's getting out first, right? And you got to, the fire department's looking at you for decisions about who needs to be cut from the car first, right? That is where emergent leadership, you call this emergent leadership, right? That's where it's at, right? This is how you get that. This is where you get that bug. This is where you start to learn that process. You got people coming behind you, but we have, we support people getting that opportunity by saying, I think it's important that if I get on scene, I don't just take control of the scene. If you're doing a great job and you're comfortable doing it, and you want to, even if you're not comfortable doing it, like you made me do a podcast, I'll let you stay in that. I will make you stay in that incident management role and stand by you and support you, because I can't be at every call. My assistant chiefs can't be at every call. The district chiefs are not going to be the first ones there. Yeah. There are few of us comparatively. Yeah. And so it's important to make sure everybody can get into a place where they're kind of comfortable in that. And so in the academy, we started kind of an operations day, and we do tabletop exercises. They put the vests on, they use the lingo, they become comfortable with the terminology and talking on the radios and doing the triage exercises. And so, even in the academy, that concept is pushed. This is not just how am I a paramedic, it's how am I getting on scene and comprehensively manage the incident.
Right.
And I think that makes you a much stronger paramedic.
When
you're able to step back and look at the big picture.
Yes. For the record, I did not force you to do this podcast. Let it be known. Let it be known. No, that's a great example. So from an incident command experience, that leadership. So, I mean, is that when you first heard it, and I asked people, because even naming the podcast was every piece of every project has, things that go behind the scenes, right? Naming the podcast. And I reached out to a handful of people, and emergent leadership means something very different to me. I mean, is the emergent leadership to you is kind of where that rubber meets the road, where you say, yeah, I'm in it and I got to figure out how to do it right?
Yeah. I mean, so there's this concept called recognition prime decision making. And that's something we talk about with a lot of our new folks, right? And from the basic levels of first time I walk into the house and I hear that patient in the back of the house gurgling and it's a congestive heart failure patient, I'm like, oh my God, this person's dying in front of me. What am I going to do? And you're trying to work through the steps and trying to figure out what's going on. Well, you kind of make that human Rolodex and you put it in the back of your mind after that call when you catalog it. And then the next time you go to that scene, you walk in and you hear that same gurgling of that patient. You're like, oh, I've heard that before. I know what that is. I know how to fix that. I can treat this person. And you're already taking the next step to manage the incident. I think that people look at this as, incident management is something that is only something on a major call, on a big scene. And really, it's every single call we go to, every incident we go to, you are managing that incident. And so one patient, hundreds of patients, it's all the same. It's just the scalability to it.
Right. Well, and it's an active process. I think you hit on something that's really important. I close these sessions out saying, this is just the beginning. Listen to the podcast. It's just the beginning. And being a leader in a titled leadership role is just the beginning. Like every day you have to show up and lead. And every day, every week, every event, you're tested and your leadership abilities are going to, whether that's scene management or, bedside manner when you're with a patient, whether that's, being on a truck with a difficult partner or being on a scene that, you have every opportunity to do things. And I think those critical decision-making points are what define the real leader. And
it's command presence.
Right. Command presence. I read something the other day, I'm pulling it up. So it said, you can't force someone to comprehend a message they're not ready to receive, but you must never estimate the power of planting the seed.
Right.
I think that's, kind of when I'm hearing you and I'm visualizing this mass casualty on the highway. And I'm envisioning, somebody who's never been on the scene and what that looks like. Not being clinical myself, that to me is the ultimate. That's the scene. Do you step into that leadership or do you sink back and let someone else do it? And it seems to me, Seth, like your experience is step into it, figure it out. Can you tell me about a time that you stepped into it and went, ooh, kind of hard lessons learned or places where you had to figure out how to be comfortable? Because I think the truth is leadership, as we've talked about, it's not always comfortable. And it's not always going to be read this book and you're going to know how to do it. And there is no guidebook for you. You can learn your personal strengths and you can figure it out. But how do you get comfortable, or do you get comfortable?
No, I think that I don't ever think you get truly comfortable, right? And I think if you do become comfortable, you become complacent in many ways. Okay. I think that you become increasingly, there is levels of comfort that you get to, but I mean, you go from being the person on the street with peers to them becoming, a peer today, boss tomorrow type scenario. Yes. And that is an uncomfortable position. And so that's where that leadership comes in. You have to bubble up because all of your folks who are your colleagues and friends and peers today are now like, all right, hotshot. Now what are you going to do?
Right.
What are you going to do? What makes you that guy? And so, I think that, it's important to lead from, that concept of lead from the front. Right. I mean, I would never do would never ask somebody to do something that I'm not going to be comfortable doing, right?
Right.
Or never ask someone to step out and run an incident that I'm not going to be standing there. But I also can't do things by myself, right? I mean, I think it's from my seat, it's important for me to empower people, to decentralize that command, because I can't be everywhere. Micromanaging is not the answer. When you start getting to a place where you have 500 people in an organization, there's no way to be at every call at the same time and making sure that everyone's doing the right thing. And that's where, you know, you got to empower people to do the right thing and make sure they're going to, and know that they're going to. And I think that that's important. You know, I after I took this position, we started a assistant chief role that kind of separated me from the district chiefs, and it was bittersweet in a way, because I was really close as the supervisor for all of the district chiefs, and this kind of created that span of control. But at the same time, I had to empower the shift commanders so that they could establish themselves as the supervisor for the district chiefs.
Sure.
And that required me to step back a lot, which was not easy. That wasn't an easy thing to do, because I didn't want them to think I was abandoning them. I didn't want them to think that I was stepping away from them. It just, I needed to be able to focus on other things and let the shift commanders manage their shifts. You know, we have this philosophy with our operations leadership team: lead your people and manage your resources, and understand the difference between lead and manage.
Yep.
And that's kind of our motto. And it's definitely a different thing. Leading and managing are two different things, but they're both very important in order for this to work.
Yes. I love that you said that. And please forgive me. I'm being on my phone. My computer's about to die. Good planning. So I'm trying to manage that. But yeah, I think that, you know, being able to step back and say, hey, this is my team and I'm now empowering you, is the most powerful thing you can do as a leader, to step back and allow people that empowerment, authority. I don't know what the right word here is, but how did you do that? What did that look like to take a step back?
It wasn't easy. It was a slower process, but more so, you know, as trust was built, as we decentralized a little bit more, and you know, I instilled what I wanted from the district chiefs and the shift commanders. Most of them came up through the shift commander roles. So they were, again, that peer today, boss tomorrow scenario. And, you know, I got to share experiences with them that I had when I took this spot. And, you know, they were able to step back and kind of, you know, break it down in a more manageable number, where there's only 8 district chiefs per shift compared to having all of the district chiefs. And so I think that stepping back slowly was good, but even then, you know, lots of feedback, and it needs to be bi-directional, right? You know, how's it going for you guys? Okay, what can I do differently? And you know, when I first took this position, I went and I sat with every supervisor that we have, every district chief, and asked, so what are your expectations of me? And listened to it and understood it, and they may not all be exactly what they want, but I think it's important to embrace that. And then conversely, I had expectations of them, right, as a new supervisor to them, and shared a standardized written copy of each one of those to the district chiefs at that time. So, right, you know, we renew those every couple of years just to make sure it's fresh and relevant to the times. Right.
I love that. So being really clear with expectations. And I think that's a lot of times what people miss, is that you walk into every situation, whether that's leadership, whether that's an incident, you have an expectation of what you're going to see. And it's almost, that is your guidebook, right? Your expectations and what you think you're going to see and how you believe you're going to manage it. And that level of introspection that comes from, hey, here's my strengths. So here's what naturally I'm going to do, because I'm not going to go in and ask a million questions. I'm going to come in and tell you how the cow eats the cabbage. And, you know, if you know that about yourself and you know your team, even when you move into those leadership roles, you can say, hey, this is normally how I would do this, but given the circumstance, and you can treat things more contextually. You can treat things more contextually, and you can, in that, be more successful because you know your team and you've taken the time. And so that's the part that is, I think a lot of people skip. So it's really great to see that you guys are not skipping that part of, let me learn about myself, learn about my team, and from there we can build something incredible. And that's clearly what you guys have done at Wake County. I'm really glad.
We're trying, at least. It's not perfect. We're trying. I think that also the last piece to that is making sure that you have the people with the different backgrounds, right? I mean, I look at the world a little bit differently. My graduate degree is in Homeland Security, and so that kind of, I love the clinical piece, but I'm really more into the operations, how the wheels turn, like how do we keep pushing forward? And so I think a lot of people, when I took this position, wanted to see how that was going to influence what we do day to day, and bring a lot of different concepts in compared to, just, focus on the patient, yes, but operational security, situational awareness, and understanding the responsibility I feel towards the people in the streets, right? It's no longer my job to take care of one patient at a time. It's my job to take care of the people who are taking care of those patients. And I think that's important for people to recognize when you take that step and move up the ranks and take care of your people.
Right. And that's a great note to leave on, Seth. I typically close it out to ask people what is, the one takeaway. If people can say, as a leader, I can finish this episode and this is the thing that I can do. That's a powerful, powerful message to leave people with. Take care of your people. And in that, and I think it's interesting because I think it's Hilton. I should know these things before I start these podcasts, but I believe it's Hilton. They say, if you take care of your customers are taking care of you. And it's the same thing with your employees. It's the same thing with your teams. It's the same thing with the people you're managing, in an incident on the side of a highway where the rubber's meeting the road. When you have the chance to step into leadership, you got to do it.
Yeah.
It's
you're either it's going to make or break you, right? You're going to step up and do it, and you're going to be good at it. And it doesn't need to be perfect, right? There's a million right ways to do it. There's also a couple of absolutely wrong ways to do it, when you're running a scene, but more or less, doing something is better than vapor locking and doing nothing, right?
Well, you've never seen, fire department or an EMS agency or a police department. You've never seen, and I say that in confidence, even knowing, with the protests and the riots and all the craziness that is our world right now, people don't do nothing in our world, right? You've got to do
Everyone's doing something.
You got to do something. And in that, I think what I've heard you say is you're going to mess up. You're going to do something and you're going to go, ooh, maybe not. That level of awareness is important. And being able to step forward in confidence really starts with knowing who you are. And for you, self-confidence, self-assurance. For somebody else, it may be, what are some of the other responsibilities or belief systems or some of those other strengths that they have that really complete that team. And so I think that's a really cool thing. So we've talked about some books that got you where you are. Obviously, you're passionate about incident management. You've got the education to follow. I am proud to know you. I'm proud to have you on my podcast talking about emergent leadership. If people want to continue the conversation with you, Chief Komansky, how do they do that?
Email, it's Seth.Komansky, Komansky @wakegov.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for being on with me today. Your insight is invaluable, and I hope that you'll join me.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Have a